David is 59 years old. He has $1,800,000 sitting in his investment accounts. Not a rough estimate. He checked it last night on a spreadsheet he has been updating every Sunday for the past 11 years. This morning, he woke up at 5:30 a.m., got dressed, drove to a job he stopped caring about sometime around 2019. He is not broke. He is not reckless. He is one of the most financially disciplined people you will ever meet. And yet here he is, still showing up. Why? Because somewhere between saving the first dollar and accumulating the last one, the fear did not go away. It just changed shape. It stopped being what if I don't save enough and became what if I spend too much. He is terrified of a single unexpected medical bill wiping out years of work. He tells himself one more year. He has been telling himself that for 3 years now. I thought the hardest part of personal finance was building the first million. I was wrong. I have watched people stall out right at the finish line, not because the money was not there, but because the permission was not. 30 years of disciplined saving trains you to accumulate. Nobody trains you to stop. That is the real problem. And it is not a money problem. The reason most people in their late 50s are still clocking in is not because their accounts are too small. It is because they are missing a precise blueprint for navigating the 7 years between 58 and 65. The healthcare gap, the sequence risk, the psychological rewiring. That blueprint is what this video is about. If you are in your 50s, feel worn down, and cannot bring yourself to pull the trigger, this is for you. Welcome to Wes Investor. Subscribe if you want to keep building this kind of clarity with me. Today, we are going through the 3 rules of decumulation, the framework that makes retiring at 58 not just possible, but structurally sound. Let's get into it. Let's start with a number that shaped your entire working life without you ever agreeing to it. 65. That number did not come from a doctor. It did not come from a longevity study. It came from a policy decision made in 1935. When Congress passed the Social Security Act and set the retirement age at 65. Here is what they did not put in the brochure. The average American life expectancy at the time was 61.7 years. The system was not designed to support retirees. It was designed to support the idea of retirees, knowing that a large portion of workers would never live long enough to collect. That is not cynicism. That is the math the actuaries built the program on. Now fast forward to today. If you have already reached 55, your life expectancy extends well past 83, according to ESSA mortality tables. The retirement age barely moved. Your lifespan grew by more than 20 years. And yet most people are still organizing their entire exit strategy around a number that was calculated when men were dying before they could even retire. I am not a gerontologist. But the public health data is pretty clear on one thing. There is a window, roughly from your late 50s to your late 60s, where you can still do the physical things that actually require a body. Hiking. Traveling through Europe without your knees filing a formal complaint. Keeping up with grandchildren who do not slow down for anyone. That window does not stay open indefinitely. And here is the trade-off nobody wants to say out loud. Every extra year you stay in the office adds maybe 6 to 8% to your portfolio. But it costs you roughly 10% of your remaining high-functioning years. That is not a neutral exchange. That is trading irreplaceable time for money you already have enough of. If you feel guilty about wanting to stop at 58, consider this: working to 65 is not a measure of your work ethic. It is the result of a social program that was written for a world where most people did not live this long. You are not lazy for questioning it. You are just looking at the actual math. So why does the guilt persist? Why do people with $1,800,000 still feel like they cannot stop? Because the financial piece, as uncomfortable as this is to hear, is only half the equation. The other half is structural. There are specific gaps, specific risks, specific systems you need in place before the number in the account actually means freedom. That is where the 3 rules come in. Welcome to Rule 1. David retired on a Friday. By the following Wednesday, he was already doing math in his head at the grocery store. Not because anything had gone wrong, but because he watched his account balance drop $3,000 in the first month, and something in his chest tightened in a way he did not expect. He cut his morning coffee. Not because $5 was going to change anything, but because spending without a paycheck coming in felt fundamentally wrong, like he was doing something he was not supposed to be doing. That feeling has a name. Researchers who study retirement behavior call it one more year syndrome. But the clinical label understates how real it is. After 30 years of building, your nervous system does not just switch modes because you filed the paperwork. The habit of accumulation runs deeper than a spreadsheet. And this is the mechanism worth understanding. Saving and spending are not just financial behaviors. They are identity structures. For most of your adult life, being responsible meant adding to the pile. Watching the number go up was the signal that you were doing it right. The first time that number goes down, every alarm in your head goes off, even when the math says everything is fine. This is what traps people. Not the market, not the withdrawal rate, the psychological architecture they built over 3 decades that never got updated for the phase they are actually in now. The reframe is this: your portfolio is not a score. It is a tool. You spent 30 years building it for one specific purpose, and that purpose is now. Drawing it down is not failure. It is the entire point. Think of it this way. If you saved up for 2 years to buy a specific piece of equipment for your business, and then refused to use it because watching the purchase price decrease made you anxious, we would call that irrational. The portfolio is the equipment. Retirement is the business you built it for. The people who end their lives with twice what they started retirement with are not winning. Many of them are leaving behind the trips they never took, the time they traded away for a larger number on a screen nobody else could see. I have watched this happen more times than I want to count. The goal of Rule 1 is not to get you to spend recklessly. It is to give you the internal framework to spend intentionally without the guilt eating every decision. Your money is allowed to work for you now. That is not a luxury. That was always the plan. But I know the guilt about coffee is not really about coffee. It is about the one thing that feels truly uncontrollable. What happens if you get sick before Medicare kicks in at 65? That is a real risk. And that is exactly what Rule 2 is built to solve. Here is the fear that keeps more people at their desks than any market crash ever has. You are 58. You want to stop. But your employer's health insurance goes away the day you do. And the price tags you have seen for individual coverage on the open market are somewhere between alarming and absurd. So you stay, not because you love the job, because you are afraid of what one bad diagnosis costs without coverage. That fear is legitimate. But the math behind it is almost always wrong. And this is where I have to admit something. For a long time, I told people not to retire before 65, largely because of healthcare costs. I was not lying. I just did not fully understand the lever that changes everything. The difference between your assets and your income. The Affordable Care Act calculates your subsidy based on your modified, adjusted gross income. What you actually report as income in a given year. Not your net worth, not your account balances, your income. This distinction is the entire game. Here is how it works in practice. Say you are a couple, both 58, and you need $80,000 a year to live comfortably. If you pull all $80,000 directly from your traditional 401k, that entire amount shows up as taxable income. Your MAGI is $80,000. At that level, ACA subsidies shrink significantly, and your monthly premiums can run into the thousands. But now run the same household with a different withdrawal structure. You pull $40,000 from cash savings or an after-tax brokerage account, money you already paid taxes on. The principal portion of that withdrawal does not count toward your MAGI. Then you pull only $40,000 from the 401k. Now your MAGI is $40,000. At that income level, a married couple can qualify for substantial ACA subsidies, potentially dropping a silver plan from over $1,000 a month down to a few dozen dollars. Same lifestyle, same $80,000 in spending, completely different insurance bill. That is the healthcare bridge. It is not a loophole. It is the system working exactly as written. You are simply choosing which account the money comes from in a sequence that keeps your reported income in the subsidy zone. The 7-year window between 58 and 65 is manageable when you build this bridge correctly. The people paying full-price premiums are almost always doing it because nobody showed them the source matters as much as the amount. Ignorance about MAGI is not a minor planning gap. It is the reason most people stay employed longer than they want to. You are not trading your freedom for security. You are trading it for a misunderstanding. You now have the permission to stop. You have the bridge to cross the healthcare gap. But there is one more threat. What happens if the market drops 20% in the first month after you retire? That is not a hypothetical. It is a risk with a name, and Rule 3 is how you neutralize it. It is Tuesday morning, early 2026. You filed your retirement paperwork last week, and the market just dropped 20%. Not a correction, a real drawdown. The kind that shows up on the front page and makes your brother-in-law call you to ask if you are okay. What happens next depends almost entirely on one decision you made before you retired, not after. Sequence of returns risk is the technical name for something that is actually straightforward. The order in which your portfolio gains and loses money matters as much as the average return itself. A 20% loss in year 1 of retirement does permanent damage that the same loss in year 10 does not. Because in year 1, you are selling assets at the bottom just to cover groceries. Those shares never recover for you. They recover for whoever bought them from you. This is how people end up back at work at 62. Not because they ran out of money in theory, because they were forced to liquidate at the worst possible time with no alternative. The person who built the framework we have been talking about does something different. They already have 2 to 3 years of living expenses sitting in cash equivalents, T-bills, or a high-yield savings account before they retire. When the market drops 20% in week 1, they do not touch a single share. They pull from the cash buffer. They wait. The portfolio recovers on its own timeline, not yours. That buffer is not drag on your returns. It is the cost of staying rational under pressure. It buys you the one thing a spreadsheet cannot: options. Now here is the part most people miss entirely. When the market is down and you are living off your cash buffer, your taxable income is very low, which means you are sitting inside one of the most valuable tax windows of your financial life. For 2026, the standard deduction for a married couple is $32,200. That first $32,200 of income is effectively taxed at 0%. Because the One Big Beautiful Bill Act made the lower TCJA tax brackets permanent, you can convert additional amounts from your traditional 401k into a Roth IRA at just 10 or 12%. This matters because of what is waiting for you at 73. Under Secure 2.0, required minimum distributions kick in whether you want them or not. If your traditional accounts are still full at that point, those forced withdrawals push you into higher tax brackets, potentially triggering Medicare surcharges, potentially making more of your Social Security taxable. The IRS will collect eventually. The only question is whether you get to choose the rate. The years between 58 and 65 are the lowest income years most high earners will ever have. Converting now, at 10 or 12%, is cheaper than paying 22 or 24% on forced distributions at 73. That is not a loophole. That is using the structure exactly as designed, while you still have the flexibility to choose. The cash buffer keeps you solvent when the market breaks. The Roth conversion strategy uses that same down period to quietly diffuse a tax bill that is otherwise compounding in the background. Personal finance at this level is not about chasing returns. It is about building the kind of structure that holds when things go wrong, so you can actually enjoy it when things go right. And with those 3 rules in place, you are ready for the close. It is Tuesday morning. David is not in his car. He woke up at 7:00, made coffee, and is sitting on his back porch before the neighborhood gets loud. Later he has a tea time, a Tuesday tea time, which sounds like a small thing until you realize he has been wanting one for 11 years, and this is the first week he finally has it. The account balance is slightly lower than it was the day he retired. He knows that. He also knows where the money went, what it is doing, and exactly how the next 7 years are structured. He is not guessing. He is not hoping. He built a system. That is the difference. Let's recap what that system looks like. Rule 1 is the decumulation permission. The mental shift from building the pile to using it. Your portfolio was always a tool. Retirement is the moment you finally pick it up. Rule 2 is the healthcare bridge. Managing your withdrawal sources to keep your MAGI in the ACA subsidy zone, so the 7-year gap between 58 and 65 does not cost you a fortune in premiums it never had to cost you. Rule 3 is the sequence shield, a cash buffer that keeps you out of the market during downturns, combined with Roth conversions at 10 or 12% while your income is low, quietly diffusing the RMD tax bomb waiting at 73. 3 rules, 1 system. Built for the years that actually matter most. Here is the thing about money that nobody says clearly enough. It is a renewable resource. You can earn more, inherit more, adjust spending, adapt. Your health, your mental sharpness, and your time at 58 are not renewable. When that window closes, it closes. 58 is not an arbitrary number. It is the last intersection where your physical capacity is still high and your financial picture has had enough time to mature. Miss that window chasing 1 more year of salary, and you are making a trade you cannot reverse. Retiring is not a math problem. It is a system design problem. And now you have the blueprint. If this gave you something to think about, drop a comment below. Tell me the one thing that is still holding you back. I read them and they shape what I cover next. And if you want to keep building this kind of clarity, subscribe to Wes Investor. We do this one piece at a time, no hype, no shortcuts. See you in the next one.